The warning alarms screamed through the cockpit like dying stars. Red lights painting Zara's face in crimson as her cargo ship Wanderer bucked and rolled through Valdris's atmosphere. She gripped the controls with white knuckles, fighting against systems that had given up the ghost somewhere between the third moon and this unmarked world. "Come on, girl," she whispered to her ship the way her father had taught her years ago. Just a little further. But the Wanderer had carried her faithfully across a dozen star systems for 5 years, and now her engines were dying with the dignity of an old friend who'd simply had enough. The hull groaned as gravity claimed them, pulling them down toward a planet that wasn't supposed to exist on any of her navigation charts. Through the smoke filling the cabin, Zara caught glimpses of the world rushing up to meet her endless. Forests of silver-blue trees, crystalline rivers threading through valleys like veins of light, and mountains that seemed to pulse with their own inner glow. Beautiful and completely unknown. The first impact jarred her teeth, the second knocked her unconscious. When awareness returned, it came in waves of pain and confusion. Her left shoulder felt like it was on fire, and something warm trickled down her forehead. The cockpit had crumpled around her seat, trapping her legs beneath twisted metal. Emergency power flickered weakly, casting strange shadows across surfaces that had once been familiar. Zara tried to move and immediately regretted it. Her ribs protested with sharp agony, and her vision swam with black spots. The communications array was dead, its screen dark and cracked, her emergency beacon. If it was even working, would take days to reach the shipping lanes where someone might hear it. "Perfect," she muttered, tasting copper. "Just perfect." Outside, alien sounds filtered through the hull, not threatening, but utterly foreign. Melodic calls that might have been birds, if birds sang in harmonious thirds. A rustling that could have been wind through leaves, if leaves chimed like distant bells when they moved. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Pain had a way of stretching time until it became meaningless. Zara drifted in and out of consciousness, dreaming of her childhood on Mars Station, of her father's weathered hands on the controls of his mining vessel, of the vast loneliness between stars that had driven her to become a cargo runner in the first place. She woke to footsteps, soft, careful steps circling her ship like someone assessing damage. Zara held her breath, unsure whether to hope for rescue or fear discovery. According to her last navigation reading, the sector was supposed to be empty, no settlements, no registered colonies, no signs of intelligent life. A gentle tap echoed against the hull. Then another. Someone, something was trying to communicate. "Hello?" Zara called out, her voice hoarse and weak. "Is someone there?" The tapping stopped. Silence stretched for long moments before a voice answered from outside, definitely human, definitely male, with an accent she couldn't place. "Are you injured?" Relief flooded through her so intensely she almost started crying. "Yes. Trapped in the cockpit. My legs, I can't move them. I'm going to get you out. Stay calm." The sound of movement around the ship continued for several minutes. Zara heard what might have been tools being gathered, the scrape of metal against metal. Then, impossibly, light began to filter in from above as someone worked to pry open the emergency hatch that had sealed shut during the crash. A face appeared in the opening, lean and angular, with dark hair touched by premature silver and eyes the color of Valdris's strange sky. He was younger than his voice had suggested, maybe 30 standard years, with the kind of tan that spoke of genuine sunlight rather than artificial UV. "I'm Kale," he said, extending a hand down toward her. "And you're lucky to be alive." "Zara," she managed. "Zara Chen, no, wait, just Zara." The pain was making her thoughts fuzzy. "How did you find me?" "Your ship isn't exactly subtle." Kel's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "The whole forest heard you coming down. Here, let me see. About those legs." He disappeared from view, and she heard him working at the twisted metal that had her pinned. His movements were precise and careful, like someone who'd worked with his hands his whole life. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of concern. "This is going to hurt, but I need to move this beam to free you. Can you handle that?" Zara nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. "Do it." The pain when the metal shifted was spectacular, white-hot agony that made her vision go dark around the edges. But then the pressure on her legs vanished, and strong Hands were lifting her up through the hatch and into blessed, sweet-smelling air. Kale set her down gently in what felt like soft grass. Above them, 2 suns painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, filtering through leaves that really did chime in the breeze. The beauty of it all made her chest tight with something that wasn't entirely pain. "Thank you," she whispered, looking up at her rescuer. "I thought I was going to die in there." Kale knelt beside her, his expression serious as he examined her injuries with practiced efficiency. "You're not dying on my watch, but you're going to need medical attention. And that means coming with me." "Where?" "Home." He met her eyes, and she saw something complex there, wariness mixed with kindness, loneliness touched by hope. "It's not far. Can you travel?" Zara tried to sit up and immediately discovered that her ribs had strong opinions about that plan. Kale caught her before she could fall, his touch gentle but sure. "I'll take that as a no," he said. "Don't worry. I have something that will help." As consciousness faded again, Zara found herself wondering what kind of man chose to live alone on an unmapped world, and why his eyes held the shadows of someone who'd learned not to trust the stars. The last thing she remembered was the sound of those impossible wind chimes, singing her into dreams of silver forests and amber skies. Zara woke to the sound of running water and light that seemed to dance rather than simply shine. She lay on something soft, not a standard med-bay cot, but what felt like woven fabric over a frame that perfectly supported her injured body. The air smelled of growing things and something else, something clean and mineral-rich that made her lungs feel clearer with each breath. "You're awake." Cal's voice came from somewhere to her left. "How do you feel?" She took inventory carefully. Her shoulders still ached, but the sharp agony had dulled to a manageable throb. Her ribs protested when she breathed deeply, but the stabbing pain was gone. Most surprisingly, her legs, which she'd been certain were broken, moved without sending lightning up her spine. "Better," she said, genuinely surprised. "Much better." "What did you do?" Kale appeared in her field of vision, carrying a bowl that steamed gently. He looked different in proper light, still lean and weathered, but with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he hadn't always lived in solitude. His clothes were simple but well-made, practical pants and a shirt that looked hand-woven. "The water here has properties," he said, setting the bowl on a table carved from what looked like a single piece of crystal. "Drink this." Slowly, Zara accepted the bowl with hands that shook only slightly. The liquid inside was clear as starlight and tasted like nothing she'd ever experienced, not sweet, not bitter, but somehow complete. Warmth spread through her chest and down her arms, carrying away pain she hadn't even realized she was carrying. "That's impossible," she breathed. "What is this place, my home?" Kale settled into a chair beside her bed, and it was a bed, she realized, looking around properly for the first time. The room was carved into living rock, but softened with textiles and growing plants that provided gentle illumination. Water ran down one wall in a constant, musical stream, collecting in a pool that glowed with its own inner light. "Welcome to the sanctuary of Valdris." Sanctuary from what? Something shuddered behind his eyes. From people who would take everything beautiful and turn it into profit. Zara understood that tone. She'd heard it in her own voice often enough. The bitterness of someone who'd trusted the wrong people and paid for it. She sipped the healing water and studied his face, noting the way he held himself like someone ready to run or fight at a moment's notice. "How long have you been here?" she asked. 7 years. He stood and moved to the flowing wall, trailing his fingers through the luminescent water. "Since the last time I made the mistake of believing that corporations had humanity's best interests at heart." "What happened?" Kale was quiet for so long that Zara thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "I was a xenobotanist for Meridian Corporation, part of their sustainable development program. We were supposed to catalog and preserve unique ecosystems before opening them for controlled exploitation." "Let me guess," Zara said softly. "They weren't interested in the preservation part." "3 worlds," he said, his reflection wavering. "In the moving water, 3 complete biospheres that had evolved for millions of years. Gone in 18 months. Strip mined down to bedrock because the preliminary reports mentioned economically viable mineral. Deposits. He turned back to her, and his smile was sharp with old pain. I learned too late that my job wasn't to preserve anything. It was to provide scientific justification for destruction. Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach. Meridian Corporation. They're one of my regular clients. Kel's expression didn't change, but she saw his shoulders tense. Are they expecting you somewhere? Not for another week. I was running medical supplies to the Kepler colony. She met his eyes steadily. But I'm not reporting anything about this place. Not to them. Not to anyone. Why should I believe that? It was a fair question. Zara set down the bowl and considered her answer carefully. Because I've seen what happens when paradise gets a price tag. My father was a mining engineer, spent his whole life following resource surveys. From system to system, every place he loved eventually got turned into holes in the ground. She gestured at the impossible beauty around them. This is worth more than anything they could dig out of it. Cale studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her words against years of learned caution. Finally, some of the tension left his shoulders. The water isn't just healing, he said. It's alive, in a way. The entire planet is connected through underground networks of crystalline formations that carry information, energy, even consciousness to some degree. The springs are focal points where that network surfaces. Conscious water. Zara said slowly, that should be impossible. A lot of things should be impossible. Cale moved to another carved table where instruments that looked like a cross between scientific equipment and art pieces hummed quietly. I've been studying it for 7 years, and I'm barely scratching the surface. The entire ecosystem here is one vast, interconnected organism. When you drink the water, you're not just healing, you're joining the conversation. Zara felt a strange tingling in her fingertips, as if something was awakening in her blood. What kind of conversation? Growth, harmony, life supporting life. His voice grew soft with wonder. It's what the universe could be, if we stopped trying to conquer it and started trying to understand it. Over the following days, Zara's strength returned with remarkable speed. Cale was an attentive host, sharing meals of fruits and vegetables that grew wild in the forest, foods that tasted like concentrated starlight and left her feeling more nourished than any processed ship rations ever had. He showed her his workshop, where he'd built communication equipment from salvaged ship parts and crystalline formations that grew naturally in certain caves. The technology was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of forcing signals through space, it worked with Valdris's natural energy networks to amplify and direct transmissions. You could contact anyone in this sector with this, Zara realized. Examining the hybrid biotechnological arrays, I could, Cale agreed, but I choose not to. The fewer people who know about this place, the safer it remains. Lonely, though. He was quiet for a moment, adjusting a crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Yes, he admitted. Very lonely. That evening, they sat by the luminous pool in his sanctuary, sharing a meal of bread he'd baked from native grains and fruit that tasted like liquid music. The water sang around them, a constant gentle melody that seemed to respond to their emotions. I should start working on my ship, Zara said, though the words felt strange in her mouth. Get the engines running. Send out a distress signal, should you? Kel's question was carefully neutral, but she heard the hope underneath it. Zara looked, at him, really looked, at the silver in his dark hair that spoke of too much solitude, at the way his hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd learned to create beauty in exile, at the kindness in his eyes that hadn't been entirely erased by betrayal. Maybe not right away, she said softly. I mean, I should make sure I'm completely healed first. Wouldn't want to risk a relapse. Kel's smile was like sunrise over the alien mountains. That would be very irresponsible of you. Exactly. Zara reached out and let her fingers trail through the glowing water. For a moment, she could swear she felt something vast and gentle brush against her consciousness, not intrusive, but welcoming, like coming home to a place she'd never been, but had always been searching for. Thank you, she said quietly, for saving me, for trusting me. Thank you, Cale replied, for giving me a reason to hope again. Outside, the forest sang its evening song, and 2 suns set over a world that had learned the secret of growing beauty from solitude. 3 weeks into her recovery, Zara had stopped pretending she was eager to leave. She spent her days helping Kale tend his garden's plots where Earth vegetables grew, alongside alien fruits in impossible harmony, their roots intertwining with the crystalline networks that carried Valdris's gentle consciousness. Her nights were spent learning to read the patterns in the healing springs, watching the way light moved through water that somehow knew exactly what each living thing needed. "You're a natural at this," Kale said, watching her coax a stubborn tomato plant to bloom beside a tree that grew flowers made of pure light. "Most people can't feel the network at all. Most people don't drink magic water for 3 weeks straight," Zara replied, but she was smiling. The connection to Valdris had grown stronger each day, until she could sense the pulse of life flowing beneath her feet wherever she walked. It was intoxicating and peaceful at the same time, like being part of something vast and kind. "It's not magic," Kale said seriously. "It's evolution. Life finding better ways to live." They were sharing lunch beside one of the smaller springs when the first ship appeared in the sky. Zara saw at first a glint of metal against the amber clouds that made her stomach drop. With sudden dread, "Kale," she said quietly, pointing upward. He followed her gaze, and his face went pale. "Corporate design, military grade." His hands clenched into fists. "Did you?" "No," Zara said firmly. "I haven't sent any signals. I swear." 3 more ships materialized from hyperspace, their hulls bearing the familiar logo of Meridian Corporation. Sleek predators designed for resource extraction and system control. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs as she recognized the lead. Vessel the Devastator, Captain Marcus Voss's personal command ship. "We need to go," Kale said, already moving toward his sanctuary. Now, they ran through the forest, following paths that only Kale knew, as the ships descended like falling stars. Behind them, Zara could hear the whine of engines and the crash of landing gear crushing delicate undergrowth. The very air seemed to shiver with Valdris's distress, the harmony of the forest, disrupting into discordant notes of alarm. Kel's sanctuary was hidden behind a waterfall that fell from impossible heights, the entrance masked by curtains of luminescent mist. Inside, he moved with desperate efficiency, gathering equipment and data crystals. "How did they find you?" he asked, his voice tight with controlled panic. Zara closed her eyes, thinking her ship's emergency beacon had been damaged in the crash. But the cargo, she realized with growing horror. Medical supplies for the Kepler colony. They'll have tracking chips embedded in the packaging, standard procedure for valuable shipments. And now they're 3 weeks overdue. Kel's laugh was bitter. "Perfect." Outside, the sound of heavy boots on stone echoed through the forest. Voices called orders in the clipped tones of corporate security. They were being systematic, professional. They would find the sanctuary eventually. Kale activated his communication array, and Zara was startled to see her own face appear on the screen, a corporate ID photo from her shipping license. Beside it, Captain Voss's scarred features materialized in real-time transmission. "Attention. Pilot Chen," Voss's voice boomed through hidden speakers. "This is Captain Marcus Voss of the Meridian Corporate Security Division. We're here to retrieve you and recover your cargo. Please signal your location immediately." Zara stepped forward, but Kale caught her arm. "Don't," he said quietly. "Look at his ships. Look at his equipment." She looked. The vessels weren't just search and rescue. They carried mining platforms, geological survey equipment, and the kind of heavy machinery used for large-scale resource extraction. Her blood turned to ice. "They're not here just for me," she whispered. "No," Kale agreed grimly. "Someone analyzed your cargo manifest, cross-referenced it with your flight plan, and realized you'd crashed on an unmapped world. Now they want to know what you found here." Captain Voss appeared again, his patience wearing thin. "Pilot Chen, we're reading life signs in this area. If you're injured and unable to respond, we'll begin a full surface scan to locate you. For your own safety." "Surface scan," Kale repeated, his face going white. "That means seismic charges, deep core drilling, atmospheric analysis. They'll tear this place apart looking for me." Zara felt the network beneath them pulse with fear, not just Kel's fear, but the planet's. Valdris was afraid, and that terror ran through every living thing connected to the crystalline consciousness that made this world unique. There has to be something we can do, she said. Hide and hope they give up, Kale said. But his voice lacked conviction. It's worked before. For how long? And what happens to Valdris when they start their safety scans? Before Kale could answer, the sanctuary shuddered. Outside, they could hear the whine of heavy machinery powering up. Through the mist-shrouded entrance, harsh artificial lights began to pierce the forest's natural glow. Pilot Chen, Voss's voice crackled through the calm system again. Our scans indicate significant mineral deposits in this region. By corporate salvage law, this planet is now under Meridian jurisdiction. You have 30 minutes to surrender, yourself and any data you've collected, or we'll assume you've been compromised by hostile indigenous forces. Hostile indigenous forces, Kale repeated with dark amusement. The man's never met a living planet he couldn't turn into a quarterly profit report. Zara stared at the communication array, an idea forming. Your equipment, it works with Valdris's network, right? Yes. But can it do more than just communicate? Can it amplify other things? Kel's eyes widened as he understood. You want to let them hear Valdris directly. I want to show them what they're threatening to destroy. It could work, he said slowly, but it would expose the network completely. If Voss realizes what he's found here, then we make sure he realizes it's not worth the cost. Outside, the sound of machinery grew louder. Trees began to fall as Voss's teams cleared landing zones for their heavy equipment. Each crash sent waves of distress through the planetary consciousness, and Zara felt Valdris's pain like physical blows. Do it, she said, placing her hand on Kel's. Trust me. Kale looked at her for a long moment, weighing 7 years of careful isolation against the hope in her eyes. Then he began connecting crystals to his communication array, building a bridge between human technology and something far older and more profound. This is going to be unlike anything they've ever experienced, he warned. Good, Zara said, thinking of strip-mined worlds and beauty turned to profit margins. Maybe it's time someone showed Meridian Corporation what they've really been destroying. As Kale completed the connections, the sanctuary filled with harmonious light, Valdris was preparing to speak for itself. The first pulse of Valdris's consciousness through the communication array felt like being struck by lightning made of pure emotion. Zara gasped as the planet's vast, gentle awareness flowed through the modified crystals, carrying with it the accumulated peace of millions of years. Every speaker on Voss's ships suddenly filled with sound that wasn't quite music, and wasn't quite speech, something deeper than both, older than both. The harmony of perfect ecological balance, the joy of growth and connection, the deep contentment of a world that had learned to nurture rather than consume. Through the crackling comm channel, they could hear confusion spreading through the corporate forces. Voices shouted orders, but the commands seemed to falter as the planet's song reached human ears that had never heard anything like it. What the hell is that? Voss's voice cut through the transmission, harsh with confusion and growing anger. Zara activated the visual feed. That, Captain, is the sound of what you're about to destroy. Voss's scarred face filled the screen, his expression cycling through surprise, calculation, and predatory interest. Pilot Chen, so you are alive, and you've been busy, I see. I've been learning, Zara replied. This planet isn't just inhabited, Captain, it's aware, it's conscious, and it's been trying to show us a better way to live for millions of years. Behind Voss, she could see other figures moving: corporate scientists with their instruments, security personnel with their weapons. But many of them had stopped what they were doing. Their faces turned towards speakers that carried Valdris's impossible song. Fascinating, Voss said, though his tone suggested it was anything but fascinating to him. A new form of indigenous life. That makes this a Category 7 contact situation. By corporate mandate, we're required to establish communication protocols and assess technological potential. Before proceeding with resource extraction, you're talking about enslaving a planet, Kale said, stepping into view of the camera, taking its consciousness and using it for your own purposes. Voss's eyes sharpened as he took in Kel's appearance, the weathered clothes, the natural ease with the alien technology. And you are? Someone who's seen what Meridian does to living worlds. Kale replied, Dr. Cale Morrison, Voss said after a moment, clearly accessing a database. Former Meridian xenobotanist. Terminated for corporate security violations. There's still a warrant for your arrest, Doctor, for trying to prevent genocide, Cale said flatly, for theft of corporate property and violation of non-disclosure agreements. Voss smiled, cold and professional. But I'm willing to overlook past transgressions in exchange for your cooperation. Both of you could be very valuable to Meridian's new xenopsychological division. Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach. What does that mean? It means, Voss continued, that you've discovered something potentially more profitable than any mineral deposit, a conscious ecosystem that responds to human contact. The applications for terraforming, for biological computing, for consciousness transfer research. His smile widened. Meridian could use this discovery to revolutionize human expansion into the galaxy. Round them, Valdris's song grew more urgent, more pleading. The planet understood what was being discussed, and its fear flowed through every crystal, every drop of healing water, every blade of luminescent grass. No, Zara said firmly. Absolutely not. I'm afraid you don't have a choice, Pilot Chen. You're both under corporate arrest. Security teams are already moving to your location. Through the waterfall entrance, they could hear boots on stone, the whine of energy weapons powering up. Cale moved to a wall panel and began pressing buttons, activating defenses Zara hadn't known existed. The sanctuary has some protection, he said quietly, but not much. They'll break through eventually. Then we don't let them, Zara replied, studying the hybrid technology that connected them to Valdris. Can this array do more than just communicate? Can it actually interface with their systems? Kel's eyes widened. You want to hack their ships? Through a living planet? I want to show them what Valdris is capable of when it decides to protect itself, outside. Energy beams began cutting through the rock that shielded them. The sanctuary's walls started to glow with heat, and cracks appeared in surfaces that had stood intact for thousands of years. It's dangerous. Cale warned. If we give Valdris access to their computer systems, it might not understand the difference between defensive action and what? And deciding that all humans are a threat that needs to be eliminated. Zara felt the planet's consciousness brush against her mind, vast, alien, but undeniably kind. It won't, she said with certainty she couldn't explain. Valdris doesn't think like that. It doesn't think in terms of enemies, only in terms of healing. The cutting beams broke through, sending chunks of molten rock crashing to the floor. Armed figures in corporate armor began pouring through the breach, weapons trained on them. Stand down, the lead soldier shouted. By order of Meridian Corporate Security. Cale looked at Zara, his hand hovering over the final connection that would give Valdris access to every system on the corporate ships. 7 years of hiding, of protecting the sanctuary, of living in exile, all of it came down to this moment. Together, he asked. Together, Zara confirmed. They pressed the connection together, and Valdris exploded into the corporate network like water through a cracked dam. Every screen on every ship simultaneously filled with images of beauty living. Forests where crystal and flesh danced together, springs that sang healing into the air, creatures of impossible grace moving through gardens of light. The harsh artificial illumination of the corporate vessels was replaced by the gentle glow of bioluminescent organisms that had learned to nurture rather than consume. The weapons in the soldiers' hands simply stopped working, not damaged, not destroyed, just gently convinced to stop functioning. Life support systems began producing air that tasted like spring mornings. Food synthesizers started creating meals that nourished not just the body but the soul. What are you doing to my ships? Voss's voice crackled through calm systems that now carried harmonics of wind. Through alien trees. We're not doing anything, Zara replied, watching in wonder as the sanctuary around them began to heal itself. Rock flowing like water to repair the damage. Valdris is showing you what it has to offer, not as a resource to be exploited, but as a teacher. Through their connection to the planetary network, she could feel what was happening aboard the corporate vessels. Hardened soldiers laying down their weapons as they experienced peace for the first time in years. Scientists weeping as they finally understood what they'd been destroying in the name of progress. Even some of the corporate officers questioning orders that suddenly seemed not just wrong, but incomprehensible. But Voss himself remained unmoved, his face twisted with rage on every screen. You're forcing compliance through alien mind control. That's an act of war against humanity itself. No, Kale said quietly, it's an invitation to become more than we've ever been. Shut it down. Voss ordered his remaining loyal crew. Emergency Protocol 7. Burn out every infected system. Captain, one of his officers said hesitantly, the crew is reporting unprecedented morale improvements. Maybe we should. Now, Voss screamed. The corporate ships began severing their connections to anything Valdris had touched, cutting themselves off from the planetary consciousness like wounded animals fleeing healing hands. Within minutes, they were lifting off, their crews confused and bereft as the gentle touch of living harmony was torn away from them. But as they rose into the amber sky, Voss's voice came through one final transmission. This isn't over, Chen. Meridian has a legal claim to this system now, and we will return with forces that can't be corrupted by alien influences. Enjoy your paradise while it lasts. The ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving only scattered debris and broken trees as evidence they'd ever been there. In the sudden silence, Zara and Kale stood together in the sanctuary, hands still joined over the communication array that had just saved a world. He'll be back, Kale said quietly. Yes, Zara agreed. But next time, we'll be ready. She turned to face him fully, seeing her own decision reflected in his eyes. I'm not leaving. This is too important, too beautiful to lose, and besides, she smiled, someone needs to help you prepare Valdris for whatever Voss brings next time. Kel's answering smile was like sunrise over the healing forest. It won't be easy, hiding from one of the most powerful corporations in human space. No, Zara said, feeling the planet's grateful consciousness flow around them like a warm embrace. But it'll be worth it, outside. The forest began to sing again, not in mourning for what had been damaged, but in joy for what had been preserved. 6 months after Voss's retreat, Zara stood on the observation platform Kale had built high in the canopy of the crystal trees, watching the morning suns paint Valdris's sky in shades of hope. Below them, the forest had not only healed from the corporate intrusion, but had grown stronger, more vibrant, as if the planet's consciousness had learned something valuable from contact with human technology. Signal coming in, Kale called from the communication array they'd relocated to this natural watchtower. It's Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Independent Scientific Consortium. Zara smiled as she joined him at the controls. Elena was the third scientist this month to respond to their carefully coded transmissions. Word was spreading through the academic underground about a world where consciousness and ecosystem had evolved into perfect harmony. Dr. Vasquez, Zara said as the older woman's weathered face appeared on screen. Welcome to Valdris, Miss Chen. Dr. Morrison, Elena replied, her eyes bright with excitement. I've reviewed your preliminary data, and I have to say, what you're describing challenges everything we thought we knew about planetary consciousness. The applications for bioethics alone. Would you like to see for yourself? Kale interjected. We can arrange discreet transport, but I should warn you, experiencing Valdris directly tends to change people's perspectives on what science should accomplish. Elena's laugh was rich with anticipation. At my age, doctor, a little perspective change sounds exactly like what I need. As they made arrangements for Elena's visit, Zara reflected on the changes 6 months had brought. What had started as a desperate attempt to protect one hidden sanctuary had evolved into something far more ambitious, a research station, where scientists could study Valdris's unique consciousness without exploiting it, learning how to live with nature rather than conquering it. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. 3 corporate expeditions had tried to locate them, forcing Zara and Kale to develop increasingly sophisticated methods of concealment. But each failed attempt had only strengthened their resolve and improved their defenses. More importantly, it had strengthened their bond with each other. How many does that make? Kale asked. Closing the communication channel, 15 confirmed researchers. 8 more pending approval from their institutions, Zara replied, checking her notes, plus the 3 refugee families from the Kepler mining disaster. And that artist collective from New Geneva. It's becoming a real community, Cale said, wonder in his voice. I never imagined that you'd want to share your paradise with half the galaxy, Zara teased gently. He turned to her, eyes serious. That I'd find someone who understood what this place means, what it could mean for humanity's future. Zara felt warmth spread through her chest, not the healing warmth of Valdris's springs, but something more personal, more human. Over the months of working together, planning together, defending their chosen home together, their partnership had deepened into something neither had dared to name at first. Cale, she began, then stopped as movement in the forest below caught her attention. Are those the Chenkov children? They looked down to see young Pavel and Anya racing through the bioluminescent undergrowth, laughing as they played some elaborate game with creatures that looked like living jewels. The refugee family had integrated into Valdris's ecosystem with the adaptability of youth, and watching them thrive here had convinced Zara that this experiment could work for families, not just scientists. They've grown 3 inches since they arrived, Cale observed. Elena thinks it's the mineral content in the water, but I suspect Valdris is actively promoting healthy development in children, a planet that knows how to nurture the next generation. Zara mused. Imagine what human civilization could become if we learned that lesson. Their contemplation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the long-range sensors. Kel's expression tightened as he read the display. 3 ships, incoming fast. Corporate signatures. Zara's heart sank. They'd known this day would come. Voss had made it clear he would return with forces that couldn't be corrupted by Valdris's influence. But somehow, she'd hoped they'd have more time. Configuration? She asked, moving to the defense systems they'd spent months preparing. Heavy cruiser. To support vessels, military-grade shielding, probably mine-blocked crew. Kel's fingers flew over controls that looked like they'd grown from the trees themselves. They're not taking any chances this time. Neither are we, Zara replied, activating the network they'd built with Valdris's help. All stations. This is Haven Base. Condition red. Initiate protocol harmony. Across the forest, research stations and refugee settlements received the alert. Within minutes, every human on Valdris had vanished into shelters that weren't built so much as grown spaces, within the living rock where the planet's consciousness could shield them from any sensors. But this time, Zara and Cale didn't hide. They stood together on their observation platform as Voss's ships descended, watching as the captain himself emerged from the lead vessel in full environmental armor, designed to block any external influence. Chen, Morrison, Voss's amplified voice echoed through the forest. I know you can hear me. This time, I've come prepared for your alien tricks. My crew is mind-blocked. My equipment is isolated. And I have legal authorization for complete planetary sterilization if necessary. Zara activated their communication system. Hello, Marcus. Still trying to solve complex problems with simple violence, I see. Voss's helmet turned toward their platform. Surrender now, and I'll limit the damage to your immediate area. Force me to hunt you down, and I'll burn this entire forest to bedrock, you know. Cale said conversationally, there's something he hasn't considered. What's that? Valdris doesn't need our technology to defend itself anymore. It's been learning. As if summoned by his words, the forest around Voss's landing party began to change. Not aggressively, Valdris was incapable of true aggression, but persuasively. Flowers opened that released pheromones designed to promote calm reflection. Tree roots shifted to create comfortable seating areas. Springs bubbled up from the ground, offering water that sang of peace. Ignore all environmental stimuli, Voss commanded his troops. Maintain formation and advance on the target. But his soldiers were only human, and Valdris had learned much about human nature from months of contact with scientists and refugees. Some found their sealed armor developing small leaks that let in air. That tasted like childhood summers. Others discovered their weapons growing unexpectedly heavy, as if the planet's gravity had developed opinions about violence. Sir, one of the soldiers reported, my rifle just stopped working. No damage, no malfunction. It just won't fire. Mine too, sir, added another. And sir, do you hear that music? Even through their helmet speakers, Valdris's song was beginning to reach them. Not the overwhelming symphony Zara and Kale had used months before, but something subtler, more personal. Each soldier heard something different, a lullaby from childhood, a love song from happier times, the sound of wind through trees that remembered safety and home. Fall back to the ships, Voss ordered, but his voice lacked its usual authority. Even he, protected by the most sophisticated mind-blocking technology available, was beginning to feel the gentle pressure of a world that had learned how to communicate directly with the human soul. Captain, Zara called down to him, you don't have to fight this. There's room here for everyone, even for people who've made mistakes. Voss looked up at them, and for a moment, his scarred face showed something that might have been longing. Then his expression hardened again. Nice try, Chen, but I know what you're doing, and I won't be converted to your alien agenda. He raised his personal weapon, a military-grade plasma rifle, designed to function regardless of any environmental interference. But as he aimed at their platform, something extraordinary happened. The crystal trees around them began to sing, not Valdris's usual gentle harmony, but something fierce and protective. The sound resonated through every crystalline formation on the planet, creating a standing wave of pure acoustic energy that made the air itself vibrate with defiance. Voss's weapon simply disintegrated, not melted, not destroyed, just gently, convinced to return to its component atoms and join the forest floor as harmless minerals. Impossible, he whispered. Not impossible, Kale said, his voice somehow carrying clearly through the acoustic storm. Inevitable. This is what happens when consciousness evolves beyond the need for violence. Around Voss, his soldiers were laying down their useless weapons and removing their helmets to breathe air that promised them peace they'd never known. Some were weeping. Others were laughing with pure joy as decades of military conditioning simply melted away in the face of unconditional acceptance. My crew, Voss said, staring at his transformed soldiers, are free to choose, Zara replied. Just like you are. This doesn't have to end with anyone getting hurt, Marcus. Valdris doesn't want to destroy Meridian Corporation, it wants to teach it, help it become something better. For a long moment, Voss stood alone among his converted soldiers, a man who'd built his entire identity around the idea that strength came from the ability to impose his will on others. Now he faced a power that didn't seek to dominate but to heal, and he had no context for understanding it.